confident knowing I'm still on my way. Why not today?
Welcome to the Why Not Today show with Eric Dodge and Laurel Dodge, where we're working together to find hope, health, and happiness. How are you today, Laurel?
I'm good. How are you this morning,
I am
Eric?
fan-freaking-tastic.
You know, I'm a little nervous. We're going to talk about some things that people don't talk about.
Ooh, that sounds like going into the red zone here.
We're going into the red zone.
Yes. Can you guys hear us today? Hopefully everything's working. I had a carpet stretcher guy come to my house and left my studio in a disarray. So this morning I was trying to find all the cables and hook everything up, and I broke a few things. But I think if I don't touch anything, it's going to work.
And you dusted. It looks pretty good.
But I missed the spot. Thank you to I'm working on it. Michaeline gave me some really nice duster stuff, and it's working great. Trying to help with the allergy issue.
Look at the air outside.
I
We
know.
haven't had rain here
Tomorrow,
in the desert.
you know, here's something I thought about this morning. I'm a sick man this way.
You're a sick man.
I'm a sick man in many ways, but
in many ways.
we're about to break a record in southern Utah to have the longest dry streak in the history of their records. And tomorrow is the 121st day, I believe, and that breaks the record back to 1920.
Okay.
And then it's the longest streak we've ever had. And so I want to break that record. I know I really want rain, too.
We're going to break it.
I really want rain, but I'm also all about breaking records. So I'm kind of excited about that.
There you go. Well, first of all, I really need to stress this. Eric and I are not professional addiction counselors. We do not have degrees. We
have degrees in hard knocks life, though.
Going to hell and back.
Yes, we have degrees in being addicted to stuff.
So we can talk about our experiences, and the reason we're talking about them is because I think maybe a few of you that are watching this might have some of these addictions.
There's a lot of people.
You know?
A lot of people that do.
And what is an addiction, Eric? You know?
Addiction is something, yeah, exactly.
You know.
I do know what an addiction is. It's a craving. It's a you have to have something to survive, to get on with your day, to make yourself feel better, to calm things. It's an addiction that can be many, many, many things.
And it's anything that can make you feel this calmness, and it actually... Or
over the top. Anything that's over the top. I know someone who's actually addicted in an unhealthy way to exercise.
Oh, absolutely.
Too much.
Absolutely.
Too much.
Anything there you have receptors in your brain, pleasure receptors, anything that fires it up and makes you feel better.
When your quality of life gets diminished and takes a back seat to anything, your relationships, your friendships, your family, anything takes a back seat, then you possibly have a problem. And we just went to a celebration of life for my mom's sister-in-law. And one of the things that was the neatest takeaway I got from that was that my uncle, when he went into rehab and decided to stop taking drugs and drinking and stuff, she went with him to support him and didn't even know she had a problem until she went to AA or NA, and she's like, wait, I have all of these symptoms that they're talking about. I didn't know I was addicted. And she didn't know until she actually, she was just going on with her life and had no idea that she was addicted to drugs and alcohol as well. She was just thought that was normal, and she didn't know until she went.
And they both, my brother Kevin and Chris, embraced the Narcotics Anonymous life, became sponsors, became host homes, did so many things. For 27 years, did he say?
Yeah.
A lot of years that became their life, their purpose, their goal. And there were a lot of addicts there.
There was.
Active addicts and recovering. And I say the word recovering. I am a recovering addict, which means I am always working on staying away from addictive things. And I feel like we're all recovering. I don't think we're ever done.
No.
When we're an addict, because with these pleasure things are in our brains, and sure, I crave.
Well, and
I crave pain pills at times when I hurt.
And there's things that
I know better.
There's set-offs too. You have set-offs.
Oh, triggers. Oh, absolutely.
Triggers, set-offs. I know one of my friends who's been doing really good at staying away from alcohol lately, and his brother ended up dying yesterday, and that type of a thing is a huge trigger. And I think he's probably not sober at the moment. I understand that because I've been through that. I understand those types of triggers, and so I think a lot of people do as well.
Well, and you should expect relapses, and there should be a plan. If you're thinking you might be addicted, you probably are. If you're thinking that you can't go on a trip unless you're sure you've got double your pain pills in case you run out.
Oh yeah, what if the plane gets stranded?
You're addicted.
Yep.
What if
Kevin's in here with us right now.
Hi, Kevin.
We were just talking about you.
You missed us bragging about you and all the good things you do. If you can't plan to go anywhere for the day without packing your little bag of pain pills with you or your alcohol in your bag, you're addicted. You have to recognize that you're addicted, but then you have to search and figure out if you'll hit a bottom. You hit a point where you just say, I can't live like this anymore. I would run out of my pain pills on the weekends, and they would be horrible weekends.
Oh, I remember them well.
The cramps, and can I say it, the shits, and the
shakes.
nausea, and the shakes.
You had the shakes, you would be in bed.
And I would be so glad for Monday, because it would be time to refill my pain pill prescription.
Yeah.
If you've been through these things, maybe it's time to start thinking and talking about finding some help.
Well, and one of the things that I've noticed, and this is just an observation from all the people I've been around who have been addicted to pain and narcotic medications, is your body reacts to wanting those. I have a friend who he was addicted to Lortabs, and so if they were even in his cupboard or at his house, his arm would start hurting. His arm would start hurting really bad, and it wasn't like he was faking it. He would just be hurting and hurting. He's like, my arm's hurting. I really need to take those pills. And if he didn't have the pills, that reaction didn't happen. It was like his brain knew that those pills were close by, and so it would fabricate this real pain to him, this real pain that he needed to take those pills for. And so I watched that happen many times. I watched it happen with you many times. Not that you weren't really in pain, but I remember when you went into rehab, you had a million knots everywhere. I mean, you could feel the knots, and if you touched them, it was hurt. And when you came out of rehab, you still have a few, but 90% of those went away, and you couldn't even touch your wrist like this without you saying "ow." And I know you don't have them, because you had bumps everywhere, and that was your body creating that need for those drugs.
And it's not just drugs, but we're not going to give a bunch of advice.
No,
on particular rehabs, but this is important.
And I want to say this: we're not going to blame. There was a time when we blamed the doctors, and yes, there is some fault there, but the doctors are just trying to help their patients. And they are making money. There is a huge amount of money that they make. There's a whole lot that goes on in the back end that we're not getting into the political side of it. We're not getting into the holistic stuff, because there's so many things that we could talk about that they just, we're not going to get into that side of it. We're not going to get into certain rehabs, because we went through many different things when it came to rehabs and found out a lot. We learned a lot. We learned that you can make some huge mistakes with rehabs as well. And we lost a lot of money, but it was still worked out. It was a necessary evil, and so yeah.
And I want to say that you need to own up. The first step is saying, yes, there's doctors. Yes, there's an alcohol store. Yes, there's friends that are drinking in front of me. But this has to be on you. It has to be your bottom, your why. You have to have whys. Why do I want to get better? What do I want to do? And get help.
Exactly. And Susie just made a comment in there Well, that's a huge one that I had. Spending was an addiction for me. I had, I think at one time like 6 or 7 open credit accounts. I would put everything on credit, and I would spend everything, and I was completely living paycheck to paycheck and way behind at one time in my life. And I had to change my way of thinking and go to, I had to go to decluttering and giving. I had to go to giving my things to blessing others. I had to reprogram my thought. So instead of running to the store to buy something, which I still sometimes do, mostly now it's food. And then if people have ever followed my weight journey for the last 20 years, I've gained hundreds of thousands of pounds and lost them. Yeah. And I'm on the upswing right now, which means I've gained most of my weight back. And I've got to get back to stop running to the store. The worst thing they did was build 2 grocery stores close to my house. And
really close
to my house. I used to ride my bike over, and then that didn't help because then I just couldn't carry all the donuts home. But you know, spending is a huge addiction for some people. They get that dopamine release by buying something nice, and that's a huge thing. I've watched a lot of documentaries on that. And spending is an addiction just as much as eating is an addiction, just as much as so many things can get control of your life.
Well, I was just writing down some of these addictions to alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, video games. You can actually gaming. Have withdrawals.
You know, they have rehabs now for kids playing Fortnite. And different games, they are putting kids into these electronic reduction rehab centers. And it's huge. It's huge. It's huge. And then they have that new disease out called nomophobia, which is no mobile phone phobia, which I have. I have this nomophobia.
You have that.
And it's a connection. You feel like you're safe. You feel safe. And when I went down the Grand Canyon and I didn't have any service, and I just thought in my mind, everything bad was happening. My house was burned down. My family was dying. Everything that could go in my head was happening back home, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody to find out. And that's what nomophobia is. You're not connected to those that you care about, and so you're so stressed all the time when you're out of service. That's an addiction. It's electronics addiction, and Netflix is an addiction, and it just can keep going and going and going.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about when, I'm saying when, you recognize that you are addicted to something. Research
is a big thing.
Help in your areas. Don't look at the scary part of it and the picture of being sick and things like that. Look at the joy and the help that you'll gain back.
Right.
One thing I wanted to recommend here in southern Utah, we have a place called the Southwest Mental Health Facility.
Behavior, yeah.
Call them. They don't have to know who you are. They're not going to hunt you down. They're not going to send the police. Call them and say, I think I have a problem. What can you recommend?
Right.
NA is fabulous.
It is and it isn't. We found in our community that there was drug peddling.
10 years.
Right, and there was some drug peddling. They were using NA to pick up and prey on people. And so sometimes you've got to be really careful and find the right sponsors and the right chapters. We went to AA, we went to NA. We found that AA was better. They were more into that. There's all kinds of 12-step programs. Somebody sent us a message today.
Oh, yeah, I looked that up, Overeaters Anonymous.
Neat. And it was a .org, so that's an organization, which means it's a nonprofit usually. Overeaters Anonymous. So many of us struggle with that one. And sometimes our overeating is so we don't go drink alcohol. Sometimes we drink a lot of soda because we want to drink alcohol. And I'm just being honest on that. This came from one of my addictions. And so whenever somebody yells at me and says, you drink too much soda, I just want to laugh at them and say it's better than what I was drinking. So,
and you know, Southwest Mental Health, and you probably have something in your community, call them and say, I'm this age. I think I'm addicted. What do you recommend? And if you go into NA or AA or Overeaters Anonymous, they'll give you a sponsor. Yeah. They'll give you somebody to work with, and you can go to meetings all day long. I went to a meeting every day for a year.
And then there's so many resources now where they have anonymous text numbers that you can text in for support without having to even give your name. and things like that. When you have anxiety, when you have anything like that, you can jump into some of those anonymous places, so you don't have to feel embarrassed about that kind of a thing.
And you know, that's the hard thing. There is that embarrassment stage, but everybody struggles with some of these things. So I was addicted to pain pills. I got off of those. The next year was really bad, and so my new drug of choice became food.
Well, one thing I want to hit on that before we move on from the pain pills, because this was a long addiction for her, and I got to see that firsthand, and like we could tell lots of stories on it. We won't, but do your research, like she said. I just trusted everybody. I called the doctor when my mom was having one of her crashes, and I said, "We've got a problem here. What do we do?" And he said, "Oh, there's this wonderful rehab center locally. Send her over there." And so we sent her over to this methadone clinic, which is what they use to get people off of heroin, which is a super powerful drug. And I know because I've had methadone, but you're learning stuff about me here. But
you'd be surprised.
I know. So we did what the doctor said, and we sent her to this methadone clinic, and she had to go. And the doctor said this was the way to do it. So we thought it was. And she had to go over, get in line with all of these heroin addicts, and get a little case of 7-day supply of liquid methadone. And it had a lock on it.
I had to go every day for a year to earn that.
To earn the case. We couldn't go on trips. We had to come home on our camp out so she could get that. And turns out that methadone was about 100 times worse for you than Lortabs.
As far as withdrawals.
The way it gets into your muscles and into your system, it takes a lot longer. And so when we were taking her to rehab, we found that out, that getting off of methadone was much, much tougher than if we would have got her into a treatment center before that. And the doctor was uneducated on that. And so do your research.
And the rehab I went into had never treated a methadone addict.
The rehab didn't know what they were doing, and it caused some huge problems. They shouldn't have been in business at the time they were in business. I could go into that rehab center. It was a horrible, horrible. They did the best they knew how to do, but they didn't know what they were doing. They were not qualified to treat people in that condition. And so that's a big thing. And she did. She turned to food, and then I turned to food. And I remember losing weight while she was in rehab. We were all going to get in shape while she was gone. She was gone for 3 months or so.
I lost 25 pounds
you did.
In there.
You called me and told me you were wasting away. I remember that. And I called the people and said, "Hey, she said she's wasting away." And they said, "No, she's not. She's still got weight to lose."
I needed to waste a lot more.
Yeah. Yep. But it was quite the experience. And, you know, the thing is
but I'm here.
There's so many people whose neighbors and friends and brothers and sisters are going through this, and they don't know it, and
they're afraid to face it.
I can tell you right now, every one of you listening right now has somebody, either you or close to you, very close to you, who is dealing with an addiction problem. You may not know it, but it is happening. I can promise you that, and they do need support, and they need. And here's another example I'm going to share, and this is a very powerful one. But there was 2 people in this rehab center. And I use this a lot. My mother and another woman, both about the same age, both with the same problems. One did not get the family support that she needed, and her life turned a different direction. It's true, though. She didn't get the support she needed, and people turned their back on her, and people harshly judged her in her community. And people from her own church turned on her, and people from everybody turned on this woman that needed support. And my mother, everybody rallied around her, and it very different outcomes. She's no longer alive. She took her life. Her name was Sue, and she had a really tough battle ahead of her. And I always remember that because they were both roommates together in this rehab center.
She moved down to St. George and lived by me.
She came down to be by us.
A year I worked with her.
And she had a rough go, but her kids and her husband.
Look how awful.
Yeah, her husband ended up divorcing her because of her problems. And you know, I see that on Facebook all the time. People get so frustrated with people that are addicted. They say, turn your backs and move on and get rid of them.
It's not something No.
It's such a struggle, I know.
But there is a point that you have
You have
to
to
let them hit their bottom.
they have to hit their bottom.
You have to let them figure out you're not going to carry them anymore. Okay, so then after about a year of doing withdrawals, I didn't do the 3-day one because of the methadone. I did a lot of withdrawals. I decided food was my drug of choice. And I ate myself up. I don't know if you can see this picture. This is one of my pictures.
Hey, you're hiking.
I love those. Yeah.
I remember that shirt. You wore that all the time, the collared shirt.
I love those shorts.
Yeah.
And then this one was when we were in Nashville.
We went to Nashville. That was around 2008.
Oh, I don't think you can see that.
You
one.
can if the light's not right.
I love that shirt too. You know.
If I could get the.
But I was comforting myself.
Those of you listening on the podcast, go to our YouTube channel and you can see these pictures. But she was happy. Look at that smile.
Not inside. As we food addicts
Yeah.
know, the smile is just
temporary,
on the face.
When the cookies clog the arteries of the heart.
Is that it?
Yeah.
So then I decided, I went to the doctor and he handed me a bunch of pills. Diabetes,
Oh yeah.
blood pressure,
You were on like 15 pills.
depression, and I looked at him and I said, "You're kidding. I just went to rehab
Yeah.
to get off this stuff, and you're handing me pills. Give me some time." So I went home. He said, "Well, take them for a little bit, and then we'll."
And then they misdiagnosed you and put you on all that heavy duty stuff that was making you lose your
Lithium.
hair and stuff, which was not correct. That was another mistake.
That's all right.
Oh.
We figured it all out.
We did.
But I came home and I thought, I can do this. I can do this. So I went home and I took before pictures. I bought me a big girl swimming suit. You know what a big girl swimming suit is, Eric?
Sorry. Never mind.
No. And I took before pictures of myself. I took my measurements and my weight and I made little charts and I said, I'm never going to be here again. And I worked really hard and I lost 50 pounds on my own, but I realized as a food addict, I needed support.
Right.
So I went in and I joined Weight Watchers. And I went to their meetings and I went to their classes and I lost the weight and I worked for Weight Watchers.
Fantastic. It was so
for
great back then.
5 years.
Yeah.
Until I love Weight Watchers. I love their meetings. They changed the
They changed a
foods
lot. They changed their focus.
to, well, I'm not worried about the focus, to that you could eat these 200 free foods.
Yeah.
An addict with 200 free foods.
Yep.
So I couldn't control myself.
Yeah, when they started
So I
making,
gained weight.
yeah, the new program worked for some, but we were also shareholders in the company, and we're not here to endorse or promote any diet. In fact,
No.
there's several we don't, and we actually are outside downright against, and I won't say which ones they are, but anytime you have to remove foods from your diet, if you look back at your ancestors and what they used to have to live off of, I look at my 92-year-old great-grandmother who milked cows every day, had lived off of straight dairy, wheat,
Pork. They ate the pork.
They grew their own grains and made their own breads. They grew their own fruits. They traded their cream for fruit. If you have to get rid of some of those foods, it is not a healthy program. I will say that so firmly, and you cannot prove it to me. I went to nutritional college classes, and everybody changed. I remember when eggs were good for you, and then they were bad for you, and then eggs were good for you again, and then milk was good for you, then milk was bad for you. I'm sorry. If it was something that we ate 200 years ago as pioneers and pilgrims, it's something we should still be eating today. That is a staple of our food and our diet.
Another thing that I see a lot of people use some of these diets that they order online.
We did one.
I've done them.
It made me so sick. When you can pour meatloaf out of a silver baggie and you don't even have to heat it up and it's been sitting in your cupboard for 30 days and you can stand on TV and look like Marie Osmond.
Be nice.
It makes your stomach so sick. It's just a bag of preservatives. And I can tell you right now that I tried to eat that food and I got so sick because I'm like, oh, look, meatloaf. And you pour it out of a little silver bag onto a plate and it's got so many preservatives, you don't even have to heat it up. It's disgusting.
So the point we're trying to make is eat the things of the earth. As an addict, my focus has to be on quantity. I don't have to have 10 pieces of bread a day.
Yeah, there was a really...
That's where I have to focus. I have to, and there's some plans and some ideas I'm going to share here in a minute for food addicts and also for drug addicts and alcohol addicts, because I want to give out a little bit of ideas of support. But remember, again, we are just addicts, like maybe some of you, and we're building this website for support and help.
I do want to say this thing that Tori mentioned. Some people do have intolerances to some of those foods like dairy.
Oh, yeah.
And this is true.
You know.
Tori, I agree with that. And I don't want to say that to offend people, because I understand that over the generations, we've gotten so accustomed to eating different foods and our diets have changed that there is intolerances that have built up. They've done a lot of research, and back 100 years ago, they didn't even know what a peanut allergy was.
Or maybe they just didn't know what was wrong.
They didn't know what was wrong with them. So it is something to keep an eye on. But they make almond milks, and I love that. And I love I've tried some of the light soy milk, vanilla. It's really good. And sometimes, there's things that you can have also that you can alternate. It's just some of these other diets that are very restrictive. And I know a lady who was a great nutritionist I used to follow, and she had wonderful advice 10 years ago. She used to always say, eat these foods, but the fewer ingredients on the back of the foods, the better. Like yogurts, the plain yogurts and the light, all this stuff. And now she's totally gone away from all that, which I don't understand. But just back to the earth, easier, simpler, cleaner eating. And I know I'm not one to talk right now because I've gained a lot of weight, but I know it's from donuts and cookies and sugar wafers and Reese's peanut butter cups. I can name every single thing that's put this fat on me, and it was not those good, healthy foods I just talked about.
Okay. Well then, Eric, maybe you need to find your why, and you need to get some help. Yeah. And this is one form of help. I know a lady that worked for Weight Watchers for 5 years that knows a lot about food addiction that could maybe help you a little bit if you'd listen to her.
That's true.
But it all boils down to calories in, calories out. How much we eat each day versus how much we burn up. Get some way of monitoring your activity. Get some
I
ways,
love my Fitbit.
And I wear a Fitbit on my ankle.
I watch this, my breathing, my heart rates. I'm not doing this. We're not endorsed by Fitbit, but it does tie into many, many healthy apps. It ties into your Runkeeper apps. It ties into your Weight Watchers apps. It ties into your iTrack Bites apps. It ties into your health apps on your iPhones. It ties into everything. And it tracks your sleep, your heart rate, your breathing. And I had a panic attack the other day, and it tracked it. It tracked the panic attack. And I could see what that looked like. And things like that, it helps me with my, I do a lot of line dance events. I have one tonight. I do private line dance events, and that's one way that has kept me in shape as best as I can be, is I like to line dance. I like to teach line dancing, and that is my form of physical exercise that I can do and stay active and having fun.
Okay, and I wanted to mention that when I came out of rehab, my brain had really had some problems going off the methadone.
Right.
And so I started writing a blog.
Yes.
To learn to even recognize my words.
You had a lot of views.
And that blog is still active. In July, I put on that I was going to take a break from the blog for a while, but I think I need to fire it back up. So if any of you want to go and be followers on that.
It's just laureldodge.blogspot.com, but we're going to change it eventually. I'd like to tie that in. We have a website we're building right now, and I need some help with it, but it's whynottoday.com. And on that Why Not Today website, I want to build some tabs where we have our podcast, our live feed, and the blog, the Laurel Dodge blog, that I can even contribute to, or she can contribute to as we want.
And Emily can too.
Emily, if we could get that figured out, that's something I'd like to do. Get that tied into whynottoday.com. It's much easier to send people to that location for all of this, our podcasts, everything. So,
but during that blog, in the blog, I have written about some of the frustrations, some of the things you go through when you're withdrawing, and also losing weight and those kind of things. So, but I wanted to again say that we're not professional addiction. I probably have a lot of training in it with my Weight Watchers.
And you were a nurse, a registered nurse.
I was a registered nurse
for a lot of years. I would say you are as much of an expert on this as anybody is.
My brother is a lot more of an expert.
And Kevin in there is an expert.
Absolutely.
And I would say that those of you, you know, Kevin was speaking a lot about Chris at the memorial, and he was talking about all the stuff she'd been through, and he said one of her favorite quotes was, you know, religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for people who have been there and are fighting their way back. And there's so many people out there that are doing that and working on that. So
we're fighting that back on about every kind of addiction. I wanted to list a few things to get some help. The mental health facilities in your community, AA, NA, Overeaters Anonymous, TOPS. Go on apps. There's a lot of apps you can put on.
I saw my friend does TOPS here in town. Yeah.
My mom did for a lot of
TOPS
years.
is still around.
If you need help, you know it. If you want help, reach out for help. Every one of these organizations gives support and gives you the help that you need. Let's get healthy together. Help us. We are building this team to help us, to help you.
Yeah. We need help as much as anybody.
Oh, boy. I think we need more.
Yeah.
You need more, Eric.
I'm working on it. I'm trying. Doing my best.
Okay.
But next week is going to be a little bit different. I will be in the studio. There's a possibility that I might be working on a new special project. And next week I'm going to go out, speaking of somebody who has been through a whole lot, and we probably won't get into his personal story, but I would just will say he's someone who's also dealt with addiction and fought his way back through some very hard stuff. But I'm going to let you meet one of the most brilliant musicians in the world. And I can honestly say that because I have traveled with him, and I have also worked in Nashville with many, many different people. This guy still does the numbers charting system that is so rare to see. I can't even read numbers charts. And what I'm hoping is I'm going to go to the studio, give you guys a tour of the actual recording studio that I use, and let you watch him chart a song, because it's something that you will never see in your lifetime if you've never been around a numbers musician. He can't read music. John Houston, my piano player, cannot read music. He can only chart music and read the numbers, and it's incredible. So next week on Tuesday, I'm going to be over there in the studio talking to John and letting you see how this works, and we'll probably sing a little and play for it. It's going to be very different. I don't think Laurel will be with us next week unless she comes out to the studio, but we don't know. We're going to play things by ear, so
get help.
Subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Like we said, we're not professionals. We just want to help as many people as possible, and we've done enough stuff, especially her, especially Kevin. He said Cocaine Anonymous is another great group.
Susie said Gamblers Anonymous.
Gamblers is huge. I have a very dear friend who has a problem with that and does not know it. And
the help is out there.
It's definitely a thing that everybody struggles with. So we're going to send you off with our Why Not Today show. And thank you for being here today.
Have a great day.
Have a wonderful day.
I know I can. The past is behind me. Tomorrow can't find me till I live today. Why not today? While my heart is ready. Today, while it's in my grasp. I start out slowly, confident knowing I'm still on my